Right now, let's turn our attention to the Rust movie shooting case involving actor Alec Baldwin as we're inching closer to Baldwin's July 9th start of trial. Let's get you a little refresher on the issues that sit at the heart of this case. Court TV legal correspondent Kelly Craft has more on the case against Alec Baldwin.
Alec Baldwin was rehearsing this scene from the movie Rust when Halyna Hutchins was shot.
The firearm went off in a small wooden church. The first person I made eye contact with was Halyna, who was clearly injured by whatever that gunshot was, that noise we had just heard. And in fact, she was starting to go flush and I think holding her right side.
Halyna Hutchins, the film's cinematographer, was shot and killed. The director, Joel Souza, standing behind her, was wounded.
It felt like somebody had taken a baseball bat to my shoulder. They kept talking about this bullet, and it could not compute for me. This is not possible. It's just not possible that there's a live round. It just can't. And then they eventually maybe grew tired of my protesting about it because they showed me the x-ray of my back, and there was a very large bullet in it.
Prosecutors brought criminal charges against 3 people in connection with Hutchins' death. David Halls, the first assistant director, he accepted a plea deal. Hannah Gutierrez, the film's armorer, was convicted of involuntary manslaughter. And Alec Baldwin, the producer of Rust, he is awaiting his trial. Gutierrez was responsible for making sure all the firearms on the set were safe. Prosecutors allege she brought live rounds onto the set and failed to properly check the rounds before they were loaded into the gun.
We find the defendant, Hannah Gutierrez, guilty of involuntary manslaughter as charged in count 1.
A jury convicted Gutierrez, even though her defense attorney argued at her trial that Alec Baldwin was the one to blame.
It was not in the script for Mr. Baldwin to point the weapon. Ms. Gutierrez Reed, nor anybody else, knew that Mr. Baldwin in that moment was going to point the weapon right at Halyna and Mr. Hutchins and Mr. Souza and do what he did.
The defense noted that Baldwin tended to go off script, like he did in this scene, firing a shot after the director yelled, "Cut."
Alec Baldwin's conduct and his lack of gun safety inside that church on that day is something that he's going to have to answer for. Hopefully throughout this process, people in the film industry are beginning to understand that real guns aren't toys. And if real guns are going to be used on movie sets, there needs to be a lot of safety protocols in place. We never want this to happen again.
All right, that was our Kelly Craft reporting there. Now let's talk a little bit about what may be the biggest issues in this trial. Joining me, criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor Franz Borchardt, and former law enforcement officer, domestic violence expert, and the host of the Strong Enough podcast, Claudia King. All right, Franz, tell me, what do you see as the biggest issue as we get ready to go to trial on July the 9th?
So the biggest issue, if I'm representing Alec Baldwin, is you've already gotten the right person. You've prosecuted the expert on the scene, on the movie set. You've convicted her. You don't need another pound of flesh. I'm an actor. I'm not an expert in firearms. And look, he's got a defensible position, right? It clearly there's criminal culpability already imposed by the armorsmith. So I'm pointing the finger, and then I'm pointing the finger some more.
I hear you, Franz, and I think they've got a real good shot pointing the finger here. But the big thing for Alec Baldwin he's going to have to fight is that he pointed the gun, the pointing of the gun. Claudia King, let me go to you on this point. Somebody who is, adept at firearms, somebody, who understands the importance of firearm safety. When you hear this, knowing everything else, he didn't load it. Yes, he didn't supply the ammunition. Yes, he didn't check it. None of those things were his job. But he is said to have pointed it at another person. How problematic do you think that's going to be?
I think that's going to be very problematic because no matter what your position, when you put a firearm into your hands, you need to act safely. You need to follow those basic gun safety rules. One of those is to never point it at anything that you are not willing to destroy. And he clearly failed at that one. The other thing I think we're going to see the prosecution point out is that as producer, Alec is responsible for the safety on the set overall. So he holds the ultimate key to making sure everything was safe, which he clearly did not do. So I think pointing the gun is going to be a problem, and then his role as the producer and being responsible for safety is going to be a problem as well.
Right, and that's something that's been a big point of contention, Claudia. You know, his team is trying to stop the prosecution from being able to focus on him being a producer. So really important point there. And a key piece of evidence in the case is going to be his interview with police in the moments after the shooting. The shooting, and Baldwin insisted that it was right before it occurred, right before the shooting occurred. He said that armorer Hannah Gutierrez handed him the gun. Take a look.
I went to lunch. She disarmed me. I sat down.
She being
Hannah, the armaments person. She was always handling the guns, 99% of the time. So I would, if I had a cosmetic rifle with no rounds, I would probably hand it to one of her assistants. I'm sitting there. She disarms me. We go to lunch. We come back from lunch, and they hand me the revolver, the Colt.
And I just like so name. It's Hannah again.
They arm me. Mm-hmm. And you're assuming, as we've done every time, that it's a cold gun for the rehearsal. And I put the gag in the shot. You're the camera because I have a coat and I have a holster, and I pull the coat over and I kind of cup my hands like I folded my hands. Mm-hmm. And then I'm going to slowly sneak the revolver, the Colt out and turn and shoot these other guys, or try to shoot them. I take the coat over the thing. I see the camera's there. I believe, my recollection is she was there, turned a bit, like talking to him. So I think she was hit in the right armpit. But this is all I know, and that is that I take the gun out in the rehearsal. Really, he wants it very dramatic and very slow. I'm trying to sneak up on them. I take the gun out, and as it clears, as the barrel clears the hole, turn and cock the gun over here. I turn and cock the gun goes off. Mm-hmm. It's supposed to be a cold gun. Nothing. No flash charges, nothing. Now, this is a puzzle to me. This is making me very emotional now, you know. But in my time, and I'm older now, but when I was younger and I was shooting guns and stuff, I've never seen a theatrical flash round with the material went through someone's armpit, came out their body, and hit somebody else in the shoulder. Yeah. I'm wondering if your department is prepared to go find out what comes out of his shoulder surgically. Is that a live round?
That's what we are actually looking at.
Is that a lot? Because it doesn't make any sense otherwise.
Yeah.
It hits her in the armpit, comes out her shoulder, goes into his shoulder, and he just told me on the phone, I talked to Joel. He said, they showed me the x-ray, and the shape of the thing in my shoulder is the shape of a bullet. I take the gun out slowly, I turn, I cock the pistol, bang, it goes up, she hits the ground, she goes down. He goes down, screaming. They were standing in positions they wouldn't ordinarily be in, because they assumed it was an empty, cold gun. We weren't shooting, we were rehearsing. That's a vital difference. So if she's here, if the camera's here, and she's standing here talking to the gun, and I'm on a bench here, and Joel's behind her, and this is not proportionate, because obviously the camera's not as big as her body, but I draw the gun slowly and aim off camera, and there's supposed to be nothing in there. So she's not protecting herself and standing off. I'm shooting in a direction, and everybody is supposed to be to that side of the camera. There's nobody in my line. Nobody. And so when I shoot the gun, so in the rehearsal, I'm assuming I have an empty gun, and the gun goes off, she's right in front of me. I was supposed to have an empty gun.
Empty.
Or when we shot, for the rehearsal, empty. Mm-hmm. And then when we shot, the flash rounds and everybody preps. And then she says, hot gun. She announces it, and the crew gets ready.
But you didn't even get to that
I
part.
rehearsed with a hot gun. Now.
But you were supposed to be cold.
Well, it was supposed to be cold or empty, but now, not only did I rehearse with a hot gun, I rehearsed with a gun that had a bullet inside. If that's what came out of the show, this is the most horrifying thing I've ever heard in my life.
Well, so yeah, and that's why I wanted to make sure that anytime that you've shot a hot gun, you've never seen anything like this come out before?
Never.
Because I'm not familiar with prop guns. I could
Never.
tell you what a projectile looks like, and that does
Well,
look
let me
like
ask
a
you this.
projectile.
But, see, that's a bullet.
But, yeah, so that's what comes out of.
Well, I think the question, I mean, I don't want to tell you your job, but I'm so sick about this, so sickened by this, that a bullet passed through this girl's body. She's in critical condition in the hospital right now, and I fired the gun. And if you don't think I feel really about that, I do, but the question becomes, to ask Hannah, did you commingle live bullets? What they call live rounds. When they say live round, that's a bullet that a police officer would shoot. Where did that come from in her kit?
Yeah.
She commingled live rounds with dummy rounds or movie rounds.
And we asked her. We asked her that. Do you know where you guys get the rounds from? Who orders it? Or you don't have any part of any of that?
Who, me?
Yeah,
That's her, yeah.
All familiar, okay.
All I know is when we come to the set, you hand me a cold gun. Nothing's in. We rehearse. Then we load the gun with the flash rounds and we shoot. That's it. Every time. We never had a problem.
So you didn't even get part to that second part of you'll hand it back. I do want to ask you about Dave Hall. I understand sometimes she'll hand the gun off to Dave Halls and then he'll hand it to you. Did that happen at this incident?
No. I never recall we ever doing it.
It was Hannah handing
I never recall. I recall that when we would stop the scene, if we finished the scene, Halls is someone who is assumed by his position to be authorized to do nearly everything. So if I was doing a scene with you and we finished the scene, or we finished your angle and we were going to turn around and shoot my angle, when they say turning around, that means it's time to go to the bathroom, go get a bottle of water, go get a coffee, go smoke a cigarette. We have a break. And if I was going to go to the bathroom, I'd hand Halls the gun to give to her. I would only hand it to her, or if she wasn't around, if she was away because she'd be at the shop, they cleared it. And Halls the gun, they give it to her. Give this to Hannah.
So sometimes you would hand the gun to Halls, but you never, he never handed the gun to you.
No.
Okay.
No, never.
So you would hand it to him.
I'd pass it off to him if she was not on site and I was going to run to use the bathroom, I was going to buy it. But that's very typical. Halls is empowered and authorized to hand him the weapon. He's the only other person to hand the weapon after we were done. Whether it was a cold gun with no things or flash rounds, I'd say hot gun, hand it to him. Well, usually not. Because usually it was a hot gun. If it was a hot gun we were going to shoot, she'd be right nearby. Okay. If I hit, other times we have rubber guns. We have fake guns. Yeah.
And specifically, right before this incident, Hannah handed you the gun and said cold. It wasn't Dave.
I don't be cold. No, Hannah handed me the gun.
Okay. It wasn't anybody else but Hannah.
No, Hannah handed me the gun.
And she specifically said.
I believe she said cold.
Okay, this is really key here because he's saying Hannah handed him the gun. But she says something else. She says that it was the assistant director, David Halls, who intervened and handed Baldwin the gun. This has been a really big issue here. Let's bring in our guests, criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor Franz Borchardt, and former law enforcement officer and domestic violence expert Claudia King. Franz, you know this has been a big point of contention. You gave us analysis all through Hannah Gutierrez's trial. We saw her convicted. We saw the videos. And we've got more Hannah Gutierrez coming up in the next couple hours, don't you worry. But Hannah Gutierrez, she said that she was away from the set, that David Halls took possession of that gun. Baldwin saying something completely different. And we know that the state really wanted to bring Hannah in so that they could play around with the contradictory statements here. How key do you think it is who handed him the gun? How much does it matter really for Alec Baldwin, Franz?
So in the real world, if Claudia hands me a firearm, she's going to check to make sure it's not loaded. And then you're going to watch me. And it looks silly, right, Julie? You're going to watch me do the same thing Claudia does to make sure there's no round in the chamber and that it's unloaded. That's the real world. Hollywood's different, right? And does he have an obligation to check to make sure there's no round in the firearm that someone, is it Hannah, is it someone else, hands him? And I would argue, if I'm representing Alec Baldwin, I would argue when it's a firearms expert handing me the gun, no, I don't have an obligation to do it. Now, that doesn't get me around the whole pointing the firearm, which is a big issue, right? But, you know, it's to me, it's a very layered issue, because does he have an obligation, regardless of who hands him a firearm, to ensure its safety? Or because it's Hollywood, he doesn't have that same obligation, and his obligation's merely simply not to point it? And by the way, while I'm at it, how in the world did a live round end up in the firearm in the first place? So
yes.
big issue, but I still think he has wiggle room.
Right. I'm so glad you brought that up, Franz, because I know that in the trial of Hannah Gutierrez, the government made a point to say, you know, we're going to explain to you how this happened. They said it in opening statements. Throughout the trial, we heard the evidence. It still wasn't apparent to me as a trial watcher. And I know many of you at home, it wasn't apparent to you either, because you were telling me. And then we get to the closing, and they argue that it was Hannah Gutierrez that brought it on the set. You know, I'm still personally not convinced that Hannah Gutierrez brought those live rounds onto the set. I'd like to hear more about the ammunition supplier, Mr. Seth Kenny, the guy who was in charge of bringing those boxes to the set, the guy that Hannah's supervisor was on the phone with right after Halyna Hutchins was shot. And then that supervisor starts tossing evidence, throwing it away, throwing rounds in the trash. Neither of them were charged. Here we are. Claudia King, tell me, as we look at actor Alec Baldwin, you watched him in the tape moments ago. You heard the great points Franz was making. You know, this is a movie set. They also chose to use a real firearm, not a replica. They could have chosen a gun that was incapable of discharging anything, but they opted for the real thing. What are your thoughts watching Baldwin and his level of responsibility?
I totally agree with what Franz said, and Hollywood is different, but I think if you're going to use a firearm that is capable of shooting, then you have to do those safety checks. And I heard somebody else make the point that, you know, if this was a scene where he was supposed to put the gun to his own head, don't you think he would have probably triple checked it? And so why wouldn't he afford that same level of safety to anyone else where he would be pointing that weapon? So I think they're going to argue that Hollywood is different. The expert, you know, should have checked it for him and he should be in the clear. And I just think this is an opportunity for us to say, no, whether we're Hollywood, wherever we are, we have to be safer when we're messing with firearms, and everybody that touches it absolutely has to check it.
Right. I like that point, Claudia, you raised. If he were shooting a scene that required him to put the gun up to his head or any part of his body, you wonder, would he have checked it more carefully? That's a really great point. You know, I wonder if the prosecutor might go there with that. You know, would you take the same amount of care with yourself as you did in this case? Who knows? You know, he's also, you know, he's an actor. He's under the assumption that there are no live rounds on that set, but yet sadly they made it on. And maybe through his trial, we'll find out how they got there. We're gonna hit a break. Franz, Claudia, stand by, please. When we come back, we're gonna hear some jail phone calls. Hannah Gutierrez, Alec Baldwin's co-defendant. She's convicted, doing her time right now for the crime of involuntary manslaughter for the death of Halyna Hutchins. As the trial draws closer, the focus remains on the key players who have received most of the attention. Now remember, the victim in this case is Halyna Hutchins, the 41-year-old cinematographer. She's a wife, she's a mother, killed on the set. Baldwin's co-defendant, Hannah Gutierrez, already convicted of the same crime Alec Baldwin's going to be tried of in the coming weeks. Now, Gutierrez's view of what really occurred on that tragic day in October contradicts what we just heard from Alec Baldwin. You heard me point out the biggest thing about the handing of the firearm. Let's take a listen together to Hannah Gutierrez's jail call with Camila Cisneros, who served as the second chair during her case.
Yeah, I understand, you know, like that the judge is like, you know what, no matter what, it's a loss of life and everything. But it's like, you know, like I've been punished for this for 2 years now, especially with the public, and I'm going to be punished for the rest of my life.
Yes,
like everybody in the whole world is going to know for the rest of my life. Like,
yeah, I know. And Hannah, not only that, like I know how sorry you are about all of this. People know how sorry and how it's affected you every day of your life. We know that. I don't care if I have to speak up and say something to the judge. I'm going to. I don't even care anymore. I told Jason I'm not going to sit there and be complicit and keep my mouth shut while Carrie sits here and lies and lies and lies.
I know.
It's all for her to get her little 5 minutes of fame.
I was kind of thinking that maybe my parents should make a statement to the press or something.
Mhm.
What do you think?
Well, Jason and I have been doing damage control. He actually did quite a few interviews about what's going on.
Oh, really?
So I'm glad. Yes. Which I was so thankful for. I'm like, Jason, you have to.
Yeah.
You have to.
Well, I'm
we
like,
have
you
to
know,
speak
like,
up for her.
like the facts out there is like, you know, 10 days out of 12 had gunfire, 12 days out of 12 had guns on set. Gabby said I was supposed to focus on props when I wasn't being armor. Like, when would I have had the time? She lied. Like, those emails, she told me to focus on both. She told me to focus on props more.
I know.
Like,
and then I looked at her PTI that she gave for the court to Carrie, dude, and it's way, way off. Carrie's lying to her the entire pre-trial interview. Carrie's lying to her, telling her crazy, dude, crazy. Lying
the whole time?
Yes, and Todd is sitting there, bro. Todd
just let it happen?
Yeah.
So wait, what's Carrie telling her?
Girl. Just lying. Remember how Carrie in her closing statement said something about how incompetent you could have been because you tried to let a child go and blah, blah, blah. Gabby says in the interview that Alec Baldwin and Alec kept trying to bond with the child. And it was his idea. And everybody kept shooting it down, including Hannah and I, Gabrielle says.
Really? Yeah.
She said we had a discussion about this, and Hannah was not for it. She did not want them to go do that. She's like, and then Carrie tells her.
In my text messages, I said that I'd be willing to train him if his family wanted.
Safely, yes, because he was being crazy. He kept grabbing on set, making things dangerous.
You know,
how is that your problem? You brought that problem to the attention.
Exactly.
You brought it to their attention. Hey, listen, this kid is making things dangerous.
Yeah, I said it out loud. I said, who let the child get the gun? Like, what the It was just sitting there on the ground, and Dave and everybody was around. But, yeah, I don't know. I kind of wrote something that I think maybe my mom should say or something, but I'm going to talk to Jerry's mom, Donna, and see if she can kind of spruce it up. And I'll get it sent over to my mom, and we can talk about it on Tuesday or something.
Yeah, perfect. That'll be perfect.
Because I'm
Hannah,
you know.
I don't trust Carrie not to be recording these phone calls. So these aren't lawyer calls when you make them to us. So you have to just not talk about anything because of the appeal. Okay, promise me that. Not with your family, not with anybody.
Well, I talked about a couple of things already, but I
won't. You can't, Hannah. You can't. Okay, listen to me, please.
Okay.
I don't trust that. Like, seriously.
What would they? Yeah.
Yes, I'll talk to you. I'll talk to you. Okay.
All right.
On Tuesday.
I love you.
I love you too. No, you don't have to hang up. I'm just telling you we'll talk about what we need to talk about on Tuesday.
Yeah. Okay.
Shot at your appeal, and I think we do have a shot, dude. You have to. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. There was too much going on. Too much.
A lot of the girls in here, and they all said that Mary usually sentenced them to prison over pretty much nothing.
All right, coming up, we're going to hear more of Hannah Gutierrez's jail calls. We hear a conversation between the armorer and her mother next.
Tonight on Court TV.
These are the big cases that everyone is talking about.
A lot of new developments taking place.
Shocking.
I know who killed John Bonet.
To say the least.
You cannot make this stuff up.
It's unreal. The scene of the double murders is behind us right here. Things are happening. The investigation is continuing.
Closing arguments with Vinnie Politan. Tonight at 8/7 Central. Only on Court TV.
Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Julie Grant. On Friday, we learned that actor Alec Baldwin's involuntary manslaughter case will proceed after the judge rejected his defense team's motion to dismiss the case. The veteran actor and producer on the film, Rust, faces charges stemming from the fatal shooting death of cinematographer Halyna Hutchins. Alec Baldwin's co-defendant, Hannah Gutierrez Reed, has already been convicted, and we're listening to jail phone calls that she made after her conviction. And I want to make a correction now, and this is an important one. We had some wrong information we shared in the last clip. That was not her attorney she was talking to. That was the paralegal who was sitting at the table with her during the trial. The paralegal, not her attorney. So in this next clip, you're going to hear Hannah talking with her mother. She calls her mother from the jail where she's being held. Let's take a listen to her talking about the issues in her case.
Hi, baby.
Hi, Mommy.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. I had a pretty good day. I didn't have a mental breakdown or cry once.
Good, honey. That's good. I'm glad to hear that.
Myself.
Yeah, I'm so proud of you, too. You are really handling this like an adult.
Like the mental health people are gone for the weekend, so I'm glad I'm good.
Oh, they go home on the weekend, huh?
Yeah, they do.
Oh, that's too bad, because I'm sure that would help me, too, you know?
Yeah, no, it's okay.
Handle it. Yeah, so you talked to Sean earlier, huh?
Yeah, I called Sean. He's out camping. Of course, his family's going camping and hitting all of their off-roading vehicles while I'm in the clank.
Oh, yeah. That's okay, honey. You know, you be out there. No time, you know,
Yeah,
no
I
time.
hope so.
Yeah, you will.
Did you talk to my lawyer?
Dad did, and yeah, he said, "Why didn't we think of that?" And I said, "I don't know, but you know, we need her. We need her here."
Thank God someone, and it might be me, and it might be in here, but like somebody is.
I know, and I just haven't been thinking because my head's detached from my body right now.
You're in distress. Like, Jason's a lawyer. He should be way more on top of.
Yeah, he knew Dad
But
had
also, I don't
leukemia,
think he
didn't he?
knew that. I think I did tell him that Dad has leukemia a long time ago, but he probably just didn't remember.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, because we need you to watch him because I can't, you know.
Yeah, and he's just getting.
And you're so sweet. You're so sweet to want, you know, to do that for us anyways.
Guess what? So, like, you know, I'm in my pod with all the girls, so I only got to talk to them about, like, what's what in Santa Fe because they're all locals and stuff. And they all told me that Mary is one of the judges to get.
Well, yeah.
I just didn't know.
I've heard that.
I wish I would have heard that, like, months ago when we were deciding if we wanted to switch judges. Jason and me, like, you know, she stuck up for me a couple of times, like, in that process, and I was like, oh, I think she'll be fair. You know, I think she seems like a reasonable woman, and all these girls are like, no, she sent me to prison over, like, nothing.
I mean, I wonder if she's, like, has some troubles at home or something, why she's so grouchy and so mean.
I know she's talked about walking her dogs when she gets home. Maybe that's the only people that love her dogs.
Well, yeah, maybe so, because she doesn't seem to like anyone, you know, too much.
Yeah. So has Jason made a statement or anything?
He's planning on doing that tomorrow.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. They're going to they're going to do. I don't know if they're doing a press conference or if they're just, putting a statement out there. But they're doing one or the other. I'm supposed to go over there with them, and they're going to brainstorm and decide which is best and have all the facts and everything. You know.
Yeah, no, I woke up at like 4 a.m. this morning, and I wrote some stuff down, and I was gonna have Donna call me tomorrow at 4:30 in the afternoon to kind of like go over it, make it more cohesive, and proofread it in case you wanted to throw any of that in there.
Yeah, sure. But just know that, you know, we're not the only ones on this phone, you know.
I know.
And we have to, you know, address people by their names instead of, you know what I mean? Because she made you out to be a monster that you're not. And anybody that knows you knows you're not and knows that you're a good person and knows that that's not true.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, they're just making themselves look bad. You know, it's like, you know, when people talk about somebody to make themselves feel better, you know what I mean? You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's you know, it's like, you know, like a bully bullies other people to make themselves better, feel better, because they're right, because they're miserable, and also they're probably a jerk themselves, so they want somebody else to feel bad, you know, because they feel bad inside, and they want misery loves company. In other words.
Yeah, I was
And
thinking
that's
something that
bullshit.
would be good for like a press release or something like that.
Yes.
I'll try to talk to Jason or Carmela about it tomorrow.
Yeah, but that sounded really, really good to me, honey.
Thanks.
It did.
Yeah, I'll read it to them and let them see what they can do or what parts they want to take from it. I also wanted to ask you, have you talked to Frankie at all?
Yes.
Okay, is he good?
He's unhappy. He's unhappy with the situation, but he's okay. And, you know, I mean, he'll survive. And he's just like telling me to be strong, and, you know, you're going to need me when you get out of there and everything. You're going to need me even in there. But he's telling me I got to get my together because, you know, I have my moments, you know what I mean?
Oh, no, I know. I think all of us deserve at least a few good freakouts from this, you know?
Yeah, I mean, when I heard the verdict, it was like I couldn't control myself, you know. I don't even remember doing what I did.
What did you do?
I got thrown out of the courthouse and you know, just get her out of here, get her out of here. I tried to thrown out of bed, and I told them all to go to hell, basically.
Okay, so what are your impressions of Hannah Gutierrez Reed listening in on these phone calls with mom and the paralegal working for the law firm who represented her? Let's bring back in Claudia King, Franz Borghardt. Claudia, your impressions of her, please.
She is very immature, and I believe she still fails to accept any responsibility for the part she played in this woman's death. She was continually blaming other people. It was the judge's fault because she's angry and gave her too much jail time, and, you know, her attorney didn't do this, that, and the other. You know, all we heard from her was excuses. And what else I found really interesting was when she was speaking with the paralegal is the one who had to say, oh, we all know how sorry you are, and, you know, you really wish this had never happened. We've never really heard her herself express any remorse for what has happened, and you would hope that being in jail would give her time to reflect on what happened and come out a better person. And unfortunately, at this point, it doesn't really look like that's going to happen.
Right. Appreciate it, Claudia. Franz Borghardt, your impressions of her, please.
Every single prison phone call that you ever make, if you're in prison, Julie, you may never be in prison, Julie, but every single one says, hey, this phone call's being recorded. And yet we get those two calls we just listened to. Man, get off the phone, Hannah. And you know, the sad thing is it not only affects Alec Baldwin's case potentially, but, you know, she has a viable appellate issue that's kind of circulating right now on some exculpatory evidence that she's claiming she wasn't given. Anything she says can be used against her. Shut up, get off the phone.
Yeah, right, exactly. Stop talking. Yeah, great advice. I know, Franz, appreciate it. I got to say goodbye and a big thank you to Franz Borghardt and Claudia King for joining us this morning. Always great to have you both.